Medicare mistakes can be expensive, and some of the biggest ones happen before people even realize they made them. Today we're talking about when you can delay Medicare without getting penalized and why higher income retirees sometimes get hit with a surprise Medicare surcharge. Today on the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show.
It's the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show.
Howdy neighbor, I'm Michael Andrews with Andrews Insurance and Advisory, and you are listening to the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show, where we tackle real-life questions about retirement, Medicare, and Social Security every week. Today we've got two really good Medicare questions, one about whether you can delay Medicare while you're still working, and one about how IRMAA can affect what you pay for Medicare after you retire. Our first question today comes from Sally. Sally writes in and says, "Hey Michael, I'm turning 65 this summer and I'm still working. I've heard that you can get a penalty for not enrolling in Medicare at the right time. Can you help explain that to me?" Sally, thank you so much for sending this in, and I appreciate you listening to the show. So this is the way it works when you're turning 65. I know a lot of your friends may be getting on Medicare, but you're still working and you are trying to figure out whether you have to sign up or whether you can delay it. So first things first, when you turn 65, you usually have the option to enroll in Medicare. Medicare Part A is hospital insurance, and for most people, if you or your spouse worked and paid into the system long enough, Part A does not have a monthly premium. Part A is the part that helps cover inpatient hospital coverage. Medicare Part B is more like your medical insurance. That is the part that helps with doctor visits, outpatient care, and things like that. For 2026, the standard Part B premium is $202.90 per month before any income-related adjustments. But there's a catch. If you're still working and you have employer group health coverage through your current job or through your spouse's current job, then you may be able to delay Part B without a penalty. But this is where you need to be careful. A lot of times this depends on the size of the employer and how that plan coordinates with Medicare. If the employer has 20 or more employees, a lot of times that employer can allow you to delay Part B. If the employer has fewer than 20 employees, Medicare may need to be the primary, and delaying Part B could cause problems. So one of the first things that I tell people is call your HR department or the benefits coordinator and say, "Hey, I'm turning 65, I'm still working. Is my employer health insurance considered coverage based on current employment, and can I delay Medicare Part B without a penalty?" A good HR department should know exactly what you're asking. Medicare specifically says that people with current employer or union coverage may qualify for a special enrollment period later on. But if you have retiree coverage or COBRA, it does not work that exact same way. Now, this is one of the horror stories that I see over and over, and is people who think that they have to sign up for everything at 65 no matter what. So they go ahead and they enroll in Part A, then they enroll in Part B, and they start paying that monthly Part B premium. But they're still paying for health insurance through their job. In some cases, they did not need to do that. They were paying for Medicare Part B and employer coverage at the exact same time because now they were afraid of that penalty. Now, sometimes enrolling in Part A makes sense because it is usually premium free and it may help coordinate with your employer coverage in certain situations. But even with Part A, you need to be careful if you are contributing to an HSA, because once you are enrolled in Medicare, you generally cannot keep making HSA contributions. The other piece is drug coverage. Even if you delay Part B, you also want to make for sure that your prescription drug coverage is credible. That means it's expected to pay, on average, at least as much as the standard Medicare Part D coverage. If you go 63 days or more without Medicare coverage or other credible prescription drug coverage after you're eligible, you can get hit with a Part B late enrollment penalty later on. And Sally, this also applies when someone is on a spouse's employer plan. A lot of people will call me and they say, "Hey, Michael, I'm turning 65. I'm on my spouse's health insurance. Do I have to enroll in Medicare?" And the answer is usually the same idea. If that spouse is actively working and the employer coverage allows you to delay Medicare, then you may be able to delay it until that spouse retires, leaves the job, or loses that coverage. but you definitely want to confirm before you just assume. So the short answer is yes. Medicare penalties are real, but no, turning 65 does not automatically mean every working person has to enroll in every part of Medicare right away. You need to know what kind of employer coverage you have, whether it is based on current employment, whether the employer is large enough, and whether the drug coverage is credible. Sally, I hope that clears things up for you. Thanks once again for sending that question in. All right, let's move on to our next question. This one comes from Craig. Craig writes in and says, "Hey Michael, I'm 67 and going to retire this year and start taking Medicare. I'm concerned about how IRMAA works. Could you help explain that to me a little bit more?" Craig, thanks once again for listening to the show and sending in the question. So this is the way that Medicare and IRMAA work together. IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. In plain English, it is an extra charge that higher income Medicare beneficiaries may have to pay on top of their regular Medicare Part B premium and Part D drug plan premium. It is not technically a penalty, but I can definitely understand why people think of it that way because it definitely feels like it when you get hit with it. The way it works is this: Social Security looks back at your tax return from 2 years ago and uses your modified adjusted gross income to decide whether you owe an IRMAA surcharge. So for 2026 Medicare premiums, they are generally going to be looking back at your 2024 tax return. If your income was over the IRMAA threshold for that year, then you may pay more for Part B and Part D. This can happen to people who are still working with a good income, people who sell a business, people who sell property and create a large capital gain, or sometimes retirees who have large IRA balances and later get pushed up to do required minimum distributions. So IRMAA is not just a Medicare issue, it is really a retirement tax planning issue also. But for your specific situation, Craig, you said that you're 67 and retiring this year. That is important because Medicare may be looking at a year where your income was higher because you were still working. But once you retire, your income may drop. And if that happens, there is a form called SSA-44 that can help. That form is used to request a reduction in your IRMAA because of a life-changing event. Retirement can qualify as a work stoppage. Working fewer hours can qualify as a work reduction. And other qualifying events can include marriage, divorce, annulment, death of a spouse, loss of pension income, loss of certain types of income-producing property, or certain employer settlement payments. Social Security says Form SSA-44 can be used when a life-changing event reduces your household income. So, if you get a notice saying that you owe IRMAA, and that notice is based on income from 2 years ago, but you are retiring and your income is going to be lower now, do not just assume that you're stuck with it. You can fill out Form SSA-44, explain the life-changing event, estimate your lower income, and provide proof of the event. In your case, that may be documentation showing that you have retired or that you've stopped working. Then you submit that to the Social Security and ask them to adjust the IRMAA amount based on your new income situation. Now, if your income spike was a 1-year thing, then IRMAA may only affect you for 1 year. But if your income stays high year after year, then yes, IRMAA can become something that you deal with every year. That's why it's important to pay attention to things like IRA withdrawals, Roth conversions, capital gains, business sales, and eventually RMDs, because all of those things can affect your Medicare premiums down the road. So Craig, the short version is this: IRMAA is an extra Medicare charge for higher income people. It's based on a 2-year look back and it applies to Part B and Part D. But if your income has dropped because of retirement or another qualifying life-changing event, you may be able to fill out that form, once again, SSA-44, to ask Social Security to lower it. I hope that clears it up, and I appreciate you sending in the question. So that wraps up this week's episode. Sally and Craig, thank you guys so much for sending the questions in. Today we were able to talk about what it looked like delaying Medicare while you're still working and why you need to confirm that your employer coverage works before assuming anything else. And then we talked about how IRMAA can affect your Medicare premiums if your income is higher, especially during that transition into retirement. If you've got a question that you'd like for me to tackle on the show in the future, shoot me an email at michael@andrewsadv.com. I read every one of them, and I just might answer yours on a future episode. You've worked hard to build your retirement, and you do not have to make these decisions alone. If you want a second opinion on your retirement plan, I am here to help. It doesn't cost anything for me to take a look, but not letting me, it could cost you thousands. Literally, it could cost you thousands. So if you're ready to take this relationship to the next level, you can call or text me at 918-842-7379, or head on over to andrewsadv.com and click on my calendar to schedule a time that works for you. Before you go, if you're catching this on the radio, make sure that you go find the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show on YouTube and Facebook so you can keep up with future episodes and extra content during the week. And if you're already watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you would, hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss next week's episode. And if you found this helpful, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with a friend who could use some good neighborly retirement advice. Thanks again for listening and watching, and we'll see you all next week right here on the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show. Thanks.
It's the Howdy Neighbor Retirement Show, helping you plan so your money will grow. No need to worry, we'll make it clear. Medicare and retirement right here.